What's up, party people? Welcome back to Party XP. I'm Jeff, joined as always by my friend Lakan. Say hi, Lakan.
Hello, everybody.
So, you keep making me want to play roguelikes, and I'm gonna keep making you play Yu-Gi-Oh. So,
Oh no.
that's where we're headed back. It is a lot different than the last time we spoke about Yu-Gi-Oh. So, I know you mentioned a little bit of the things that you didn't really enjoy about Yu-Gi-Oh when you played it before.
Yeah.
So, with that in mind, the people behind Yu-Gi-Oh have kind of picked up that maybe the modern game is a little crazy, right? They've come up with different sorts of play styles for Yu-Gi-Oh, right? And so one of the ways that they've really sort of thrown Yu-Gi-Oh on its head overseas with the new anime that's out called Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens is a mode called Rush Duel, which is a much faster paced, lots of like normal summons, and you draw a lot of cards. It's basically like a really fast paced Yu-Gi-Oh game, right?
Yu-Gi-Oh's really fast paced as it is. What do you mean?
Right, but it's not as complex, I think is what's going on. Like you still have like a lot of the tried and true sort of gameplay mechanics and ways that we approach the game during the earlier days of Yu-Gi-Oh.
Okay.
And so I think that's kind of what they wanted to go back to. Something a little simpler, something a little less combo intensive, something that's more of just like here, get big monster on field and fight, right?
Okay.
So that's kind of where I'm taking you here, is in Rush Duel. Because in September, Duel Links, the game that I've tried to keep you away from because it's really not that free to play friendly, introduced Rush Duel to the game.
Okay. So this is not. So this is not the same game as Master Duel. This is a different actual game.
No, they're actually all three different types of Yu-Gi-Oh, but they're all the three different types.
Okay.
So you have
Okay.
Master Duel, which is representative of the vanilla sort of
Main game.
Yeah, Duel Links is based on Speed Duel, which is something
Okay.
else Yu-Gi-Oh did to try to make this game a little bit more easier to digest. And then Rush Duel now is another different game mode to go along with the new anime. That's even more simplified, right? So
Okay.
it takes out the like the mechanics of I don't want to say like interpreting text. So what'll happen is it'll say here's you have an effect monster. Here's the requirement to activate this effect, and then here's the effect. So you don't have to sit there and read through the entire text. Like you know exactly what you need to do. So let's see if this works. Assault armor. I don't know. No, doesn't work. Yeah, here it is. Okay. So requirement: if you control 3 face-up monsters, machine type, you can activate by sending the top card of your deck to the graveyard. Right. So it tells you without having to say if you control 3 face-up monsters, you can send the top card of your deck to the graveyard, and then it goes into the effect. Here, it's broken up into two parts. It gives you the requirement and then the effect. Choose one face-up monster your opponent controls. It loses 300 attack and defense until the end of the turn. So simplified effects, simplified card text,
Okay.
real easy for brain to understand.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I
And I
think I'm
also
following you.
Right. And I also picked this time of year go into this because it is Duel Links' anniversary.
Ah. Okay. So good
So
timing.
that means you get a whole bunch of free tickets and decks and other shit
So gotcha.
to build your deck and play the game.
Okay.
And so that's kind of why I was like, here, play this at this time. Just because I felt like, at the very least, you'll get as much free crap as possible to get started. And then who knows, maybe you'll really like Rush Duel. I don't know. But um I think Rush Duel's cool. It's not something that I've put a lot of time into just because of obviously what's going on in my life. But I do think it's a different sort of game. It is a lot of fun to be able to summon a bunch of monsters. The monsters are also different. I mean, they do have stuff like Dark Magician and Blue Eyes, and you do have like the legend cards that you'll be familiar with. But there's a lot of new different looking monsters, a lot of things that are exclusive to Rush Duel. And I just think it's cool. Like I said, it's different, and but it's not as super complex. You're not going to be sitting here with like 10-minute combos or anything like that. It's going to be real quick pass. And, you know, I don't know. I just kind of thought it'd be fun. It'd be fun to do. I figured if I had this in my back pocket this whole time, Rush Duel, right?
Mhm.
Now would be the time to do it because, like I said, you get a bunch of free stuff. So doing it around anniversary time for mobile game
Mhm.
would be the way to do it. And I guess you can also poke around in Speed Duel if you want to, but the focus on this is to just play the Rush Duel.
Okay, so focus on Rush Duel and maybe dip my toe to Speed Duel. Okay,
Right. See how you like it.
sure. Okay, yeah. We'll see this time if I get rinsed. About my opinions on Yu-Gi-Oh, the Master Duel. So we'll figure it out this time, hopefully.
Yeah, for sure. Any questions going into this? Have you started poking around in here yet, or not really?
No, you told me about it. Just to confirm that I've never looked at it before. Basically, I downloaded it to my PC and I was like, cool. I will wait for you to tell me.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so I'm
So
coming in here blind.
yeah, go ahead and dig in. Go ahead and like look at stuff. Like feel free to look up like deck types
Hmm.
and all that other stuff and poke around. Like this isn't like an adventure game or a story driven game where I don't want you to get spoiled or anything like that. No,
Hmm.
you should totally look up like strategies and stuff like that
Okay.
because at least like you'll be able to make like a comprehensive deck that isn't just monster pile and then get frustrated when something with a strategy manages to beat you. So that's what I would say is to definitely look at stuff and go from there.
Okay, sounds good. I'll give this a shot. I will try to hold my previous opinions on Yu-Gi-Oh at bay and try to look at this as objectively as I possibly
Right,
can.
because it's not Yu-Gi-Oh, it's Rush Duel. It's
Okay,
different.
Rush Duel. Rush Duel is different. Okay, I'll try my
Rush
best.
Duel.
I will sit here through gritted and smiling teeth that I'm gonna play more Yu-Gi-Oh. Got it. Okay.
Rush Duel.
Rush Duel.
Not Yu-Gi-Oh.
Not
Rush
Yu-Gi-Oh.
Duel.
Rush Duel. Okay, fine.
Okay. So we'll be back in a flash, everyone. For you, it'll just be a few seconds. For us, it'll be a couple weeks, and we'll see how Lakan likes Rush Duel, not Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah, so excited. Oh my god, yay.
Rush Duel.
Rush Duel.
All right, we're back. Lakan, how was Rush Duel?
So, if you remember my previous opinions on Master Duel, they weren't great. Rush Duel is better for me. I'm not saying overall as a game, better in my opinion, in my experience, a better overall game for somebody like me, a casual Yu-Gi-Oh player who doesn't really want to dig into the heavy wall of text BS that the Yu-Gi-Oh main game gets into. I think it's a fantastic way for new players to get into the game, honestly, or like younger players who don't want to get too super heavy into the rule set.
Exactly.
But I still see the same Yu-Gi-Oh issues that I experienced in the previous Yu-Gi-Oh game, and including the actual the physical card game itself. So when I started off, I was doing a bunch of beginner battles to kind of like really like just I tried to come into this as open minded as I possibly could. Right, obviously I had a relatively negative experience with Master Duel, but I was like, you know what, Jeff, you were really trying to push for me to at least give this a solid fair chance, and I did. I wiped my mind essentially of Master Duel, and I was messing with the beginner battles and just like really learning how the rule set works. Multiple summons in per turn is great because it feels a little bit more like Magic in that sense. Where I can actually have something defending me instead of just the one, and hopefully my opponent doesn't have a fucking gun just to shoot my card out of existence essentially, right? And then being able to summon multiple tribute monsters right into one turn is kind of sick. Like
It's pretty cool.
I really like that. But then I started seeing the same issues where the games can snowball really hard really quickly. Surprisingly, the games here did last longer than my Master Duel games. Like my Master Duel games usually ended in 3 to 4 turns, maybe 5. But like these lasted 7 to 10 on a regular basis, which is kind of cool because I think again, kind of foggy memory here, but I think all the monsters essentially have less damage overall, right, in comparison to the main game.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of like your big beaters are going to cap off at like 25,
20,
2600.
yeah, like a couple 2,700 cards, but that's really about it.
Maybe, right. And then even like your summonable monsters are only going to be in like the 1500s at most.
Yeah.
Now the game is going to start introducing like Vorse Raider is 1900. That's going to be a big deal. But like still the power level is still much lower than even Duel Links, the speed duel format.
And my fear with, I didn't even realize I was coming out, the new monster you just mentioned. But my fear is that this gets eaten up by the same level of power creep that the regular card game gets into again. Because now, whatever cards I had before, I understand you want to always, make new cards, more profit, keep the game running, keep the game fresh. I get that. But the issue is when I even experienced it with cards that I have now, where I could have a 4-star normal summon monster that has 1400 or 1500 attack, right? But then I could have another 4-star special normal summon monster, but has an effect which is like with the same, essentially the same attack and defense. That
Right.
So like, why would I even keep any of the other cards? You know what I mean? Like, I understand like not every card's going to have that effect. Not every card's going to have, not every card's going to have 1400 attack or 1500 attack and an effect. I get that, because then there's no point in having base cards anymore.
Right. Your normal monsters.
Yeah,
right?
my plain old normal monsters, but effect monsters like just kind of like outshined everything else that I would even try to use for the most part. I did mess with the deck building a little bit. I did also look at a couple pre-built decks. I ended up going with something that I found, and I kind of bastardized it a little bit more for like what I currently had available to me.
Okay.
And what I had available to me is actually pretty good, because the game, I don't remember if you mentioned it now. Yeah, it's been a week and a half, 2 weeks now since we recorded the first half, but the game gives you a lot of materials. And I made sure not to use it on the speed duel stuff. I made sure to save it for the rush duel stuff.
Yep.
And I was able to get, a bunch of boosters, buy all of the pre-built decks essentially, right?
The starter decks and all that.
Yeah,
structure decks.
The structure decks, yeah. So that way I had, 3 of every relatively big important card from those decks, essentially, right? And then started piecing things together, and I looked up a couple of free decks, and some there was a little bit of minor alterations and stuff like that. And I ended up with something that I kind of felt relatively comfortable with, and I actually won a couple matches with. Right. I want to say in the span of like the week and a half, 2 weeks or so that we've been that I spent digging into this game, I got somewhere between like 40 to 50 matches in.
Okay.
I won like 15. So
right.
Not great. I'm not great at the game. I'll gladly admit that. That's fine. I'm just, again, I mentioned before, like Yu-Gi-Oh is not exactly my speed. But I definitely had a better experience overall, even in losing in this game comparatively to Master Duel.
What deck did you end up playing?
So I played like a machine spellcaster deck, because
the light machines.
Yeah,
with the guy that looks like Tekkaman Blade.
Yeah, I had the card here written. So I ran it around Ultimate Flag Mech Breaker.
Yeah,
and
the
then,
Ultimate Flag Mech. That's what I've been playing too.
And the other card that was,
they look so cool.
They look cool, to be fair. Yeah, and also the other card that I ran in there as well was Multi-Strike Dragon Dragius.
Yeah. So light dinos and light machine, or light dragons and light machines. It looks like.
Yeah, basically. So my deck was kind of mixed between spellcasters and machines. Like there was that one little bird that helps me essentially summon him for free out of my hand.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then the same with the magicians. I had another card that allowed me to summon or essentially just pull pull like Dark Magician out of my deck or out of my hand.
Yep.
So cool. There's a lot of really simple synergies like that available. And again, if it's simple, that's fine. That it's available to me. It's also available to my opponent. That's perfectly fine. I think that I feel like the card pool is also much smaller in this game, right?
It is way smaller.
Okay.
Well, think about it. The game mode just launched a few months ago.
Okay.
So there's that, and then there's also not as many cards in Rush Duel. Period.
Yeah.
Compared to even Speed Duel and the actual card game itself.
Okay. So having that smaller overall card pool kind of brings me into this feeling of like how I used to feel about playing Magic the Gathering when the new set or the new block would still be out, or the block would like the old set would come out, and then like you have the new group of cards come in, and everyone's rethinking their strategy kind of thing. But but the other cards, you've already spent enough time with them to know exactly what's happening, and everyone's kind of feels like you're still kind of like figuring out the new stuff. Where the pool is smaller, so everyone tends to be sitting in the same availability of. Everyone has the same availability of cards, and a lot of people have the same mindset in terms of how they want to build their deck. I ended up seeing a lot of decks that were relatively similar to mine. I'm sitting over here in the rookie tier, basically, right?
Yeah, of course.
But
right.
a lot of people just kind of having the same basic understanding of basic synergies. Not as many heavy draw mechanics in this one, right? There's some spellcasters have like draw an extra card by discarding a spellcaster. It's something basic, right? But it kind of, because of it was so simplified, it did feel much better for me to get into, and honestly felt kind of refreshing, especially when I'm looking at the previous experience with me playing Dragon Maids, right, in the previous one,
Mm-hmm.
and Super Heavy Samurai. Even though like that's kind of an Unga Bunga deck, there's still a lot of text. Like the wall of text is gone out of this game.
Yep.
Which I really, really appreciate, because it's just, again, I don't feel like I need to be like panic reading every time anyone does anything in this game. And the fact they also got rid of like main phase 2 out of this game.
Yep. I mean that's a speed duel thing too, but yes, they did get rid of the second main phase. So you only really have like your first main phase to set up plays and all that.
Okay. Yeah. So honestly, like having it being simpler like that does feel nicer for me. And again, I've played other games that have multiple main phases and other stuff, right? Like Legend of Runeterra has a little bit of it. Magic the Gathering obviously has. Magic the Gathering, you could literally do anything at any part of the game, in any part of your opponent's turn.
Yeah.
So like, and you would think that me coming to Yu-Gi-Oh would be easier for me to get into, but honestly, it does. Maybe it could just be a lack of experience with the game. I understand that. I understand that I'm the old man playing Magic the Gathering and having to relearn essentially how to play a card game. But it does feel refreshing to have a much simpler, toned down version of Yu-Gi-Oh to play.
Yeah, I think so. That's kind of why I was like, well, number one, it's the anniversary, so you're going to get a lot of stuff from Duel Links because this is like the 7th anniversary of when the game came out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to be set up with gems and tickets and various other things that'll help you kind of get set up. Number two, yeah, that was kind of my thought going into it, was that it's a more familiar version of Yu-Gi-Oh! That's kind of why they created Rush Duel, was to kind of bring it back to a simpler time. Of course, you've already kind of opened Pandora's box with, sort of the broken cards that are in the main game, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're always going to have destruction effects. You're always going to have, attack reduction. You're going to have extra deck monsters. You're going to have, other aspects of the main game kind of creep into Rush Duel. But I think it's a more fun, not necessarily fast paced, but you're doing more things. Like you're summoning multiple monsters. You get to the point where you get your cool ace monsters, your big beaters out faster. I think the card art looks great.
The card art does look very nice. Yes,
I love even the redesigns of existing cards and the retrains.
One thing before I lose my train of thought here.
Yeah.
With the pace of the game, yes, it does play faster because obviously you're removing 2 phases out of the overall turn, I believe, right? So.
Oh yeah, of course. Yep.
So, but yes, the game does play faster, but but you're right in a way, not exactly, because games lasted closer to 7 to 10 turns in this game for me, versus Master Duel, the regular card game, lasting anywhere between 3 to 5 turns.
Right.
And I was using for Master Duel, I used the Dragon Maid deck that was like a competitive deck. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And like even when I got a handle of it, I still found myself at the end of a 4,000 attack monster, chunking half my life and finishing me off, basically. In this one, because everything seems to be turned down a little bit, everything has a little bit lower base damage overall. Even though you have 2,000 less HP in your HP pool in the beginning, it does lend to a faster, more actions per person per turn, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Right.
But it doesn't bog down the game, even though like obviously you're sitting there watching the other person summon anywhere from 3 to 5 monsters per turn, including tribute summons.
Right. So I think how it goes is it's more actions, less interaction, which is one of the big things in the main card game, is that there's tons of interaction between players, but there's, your plays can be halted. In Rush Duel, there's less of that. So you have the opportunity to do more things on your turn, which makes it feel like you're doing more, I guess. So
you're staying active.
I can see that.
You're staying more invested and active on your turns. Yeah,
Yep.
It reminds me a little bit of like low level Hearthstone for me, because again, like right. I wasn't great at Hearthstone either. I was decent at it, right? But like I was still relatively in like the low middle ranks basically for that one too. It's been years since I played it, but yeah, for the most part, it's like, yeah, okay, I get to do something, then now you get to do something. It's like, it's not, there's like, I'm doing something, and then I get interrupted in the middle of, me starting to trying to set something up, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, good thing you're recording, because I just lost you completely there.
Oh, there you go. Good thing with the backup. But yeah, so like, instead of me getting interrupted in the middle of me trying to set something up, and then essentially just getting my turn nixed, right? Like my biggest issue in Master Duel was me trying to set up something really, like, what I think is a really cool play or the proper play, right? And then the opponent does something essentially to lock me down in the middle of my turn.
Correct.
Like, that is genuinely one of the most frustrating things that I experience in card games, especially like, because again, Magic the Gathering, right. Playing against a blue deck or a blue-white deck control is like, it's like I have to very clearly state I'm going to do this, and then they're going to be like, okay, well, after you do that, I'm going to do this. And then now I'm changing my game plan on the fly, which me being an unga bunga, mono green overrun player was like, well, my plan was just to throw a bunch of shit at you and hopefully you deal with it. But now, like, me not being able to do anything else after that point feels very, very bad for me. Experiencing that in Yu-Gi-Oh was even worse, because now I'm getting stopped in the middle of my action and having to read a wall of text in my opponent's cards, and then having to like refer to like a booklet of instructions on my own cards. Huh. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing that threw me off playing, coming back to Yu-Gi-Oh, where again, experience, obviously I understand. If you play the game more, you understand what the effects do, but having that, like, yeah, like more of the less interaction point that you just mentioned is a very, very good way to explain why this game, I think, feels faster, or at least feels less of a just me drudging through the game kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like me just dragging my beaten and battered corpse across the finish line, where I get to actually play, and then hopefully a person gets to reply afterwards. It's more of a conversation than like a high school debate where someone decides to just start yelling over me.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think and that was kind of why I was like, well, maybe we'll try this, just because, like, it's one of the only games that I've been playing, so I'm like, well, let me give it a shot. Mm-hmm. I know Master Duel wasn't, a 1-to-1 recreation of the traditional card game wasn't up your alley.
It's obviously Master Duel is closer.
Well, it is. No, yeah, it's a simulator of the actual card game with its own metagame. But this is, a different style of a card game, right? That maybe might have been more familiar and more what's the word I'm looking for? More, you'd be more receptive to it.
So you alluded to it before, where it feels a little bit like the old style of gameplay, because it did remind me of the old days where we all played beat stick decks.
Yeah, and that is actually like the deck to play is like old school beat down aggro is like the top deck in this game right now.
Yeah, like back in the old days, like, it was like Lajin and like Neo the Magic Swordsman were kind of just like, you need those in your decks because you just need something to just hit with, right?
Yep.
The fact that there are a lot of monsters that sit in that like 1400, 1500 range, right? They're available to you as a normal summon. You can summon multiple of them throughout a turn. You can set multiple throughout a turn. It gives me that same feeling of being able to, like, tap and summon a bunch of monsters, right? on my when I'm playing Magic the Gathering, where I can create a defense, versus like I try to play something down, it gets removed from game. Okay, well that was my one summon or one set per turn. Well, now I'm wide open for attack. This one,
Exactly.
because there's more availability and flexibility with you on your turns. It doesn't feel as much of like a slog to get through some of the earlier rounds in this game.
Yep. No, I get it completely, and that's again that was kind of my thought is like, well, it's probably going to be more like you'll be more receptive to it. I thought. I'm trying to think if there's any other questions that I had. I mean, I kind of know like your feelings on this, so that's kind of why I don't really have much. Did you find that like did you play Speed Duel at all by chance, or
No,
did you just kind of focus
I
on?
just ignored Speed Duel. Went straight to Rush Duel.
Okay.
Well, kind of. So in the beginning of this, because of like essentially lack of clarity on the game's part, or it could have been something that I missed reading because I don't like read. You know what I mean? I tried to just speed through it and tried to get to Rush Duel, where I saw level 10 Rush Duel opens, and I'm like, what? Okay, sure, I guess. So I started playing the regular game, and then I realized there's an auto battle. So I just let the game auto battle a bunch of times,
Right.
playing through Speed Duel, and I just wasn't paying attention basically. But yeah, just the Speed Duel I essentially have no experience with. It just felt like a faster version of regular card game because you're 3 monsters instead of the 5, and things kind of just go fast still. Everything still hits super hard, so it's fine for what it was, I guess.
No, yeah. So like Duel Links itself is becoming very rapidly closer to the main game these days. Like you're gonna need strong cards that have negates and destruction immunities and all of that. The caveat of the skills is something that actually I wanted to ask,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously there's no skills or characters in Master Duel. How did you kind of feel like the skills contributed to the game? Because that is something that's in both Speed Duel. I don't know if it's in Rush Duel, but I know it's something in Speed Duel where you can kind of personify the deck that you're playing with like a character from the anime.
So like you talking about like the card skills or effects essentially, right? You're so what
No,
you're talking about?
I'm
No.
talking about, and you might not have even seen this if you didn't build your
Oh, you're
deck
talking
the
about like
right
the one
way.
where it says like you can like you can draw one more card or some shit per turn or whatever the fuck that was.
Activate skill, yeah.
Yeah,
When
I
the little yellow thing pops up.
did not even delve into that. I just straight up
Oh,
ignored that
great.
when I was when I was building
Okay.
my deck. Just ignored that.
That's probably why you only won 15 games. But so basically, what
I assumed that was like I didn't know if that was like specifically for like ranked or whatever or for casual duel. I assumed it was like if it's something like that where it's changing the rules on the per player, that threw me off. I was like, this got to be for casual, so I just ignored it.
No, so that's a portion of your deck building. See, we probably should have played a few rounds. Yeah, no. So like this character skills help you either like draw cards or add cards to your hand. So for example, the light machine effect is called ultimate bond, or skill is called ultimate bond. And so what I can do is if I have a 2500 attack, if I have like the cool big beaters in my hand, I can put a card back into my deck and add one of the little bird guys that help you summon the big beaters into my hand. So that's one of the like the core parts of building a deck in this game is getting your skill, because your skill can either make it easier to draw your monsters or it'll be easier to power up your monsters, right? So like in the Speed Duel, I currently play an offshoot of like the hero deck. And so when I summon one of my monsters, I get a different effect based on which one I summoned. And that'll help me either create one of my fusion monsters, or it'll help me put an evolved version of the card onto the field,
Mm-hmm.
which is really difficult to deal with if you don't have card destruction effects,
Okay.
which everybody fucking does, so it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
really matter. I don't even get to use it, which sucks, but whatever. It's neither here nor there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
No, so skills, yeah, skills were pretty important.
I saw
So,
the character skill thing. Yeah, I guess that's egg on my face for not like actually looking into it. I guess that's on me. Again, I tried not to be dismissive. I just assumed that it was not something specifically necessary for me to experience the game.
No, yeah, it's kind of important.
Okay, well there we go.
Sorry, I probably should have. I
So
probably should have played
I
a
mean,
game or
again, it's
two.
fine because the whole point is just to go into is like for me, essentially going in relatively blind to
Right.
experience this and try to be open minded and try this out again. There were a couple things that I did point out for myself or I noted when I was playing this. So like the drawing 5 cards per turn, or having what a drawing until 5 per turn right in the beginning of the turn is a major point that I really wanted to acknowledge and praise because it reminded me a bit of deck building tabletop card games like Dominion or Here to Slay or Marvel Champions, like those games where you always have to turn with 5 cards in your hand. So that helps with consistency. A thing that every card game player strives towards, right? That's the whole point of trying to make your deck consistent, right? That's kind of the whole ideal. That helps a lot. You don't get stuck with bad hands as often. Where at the very least you can set a bunch of weenies, right? If necessary to somewhat defend yourself for a turn, right? Just set a bunch of cards. Be like, okay, hopefully next turn I can draw some more bigger threats and have, if I have 2 more left over in my hand, I now for sure have a summon available for me next hand basically or next turn, and I can hopefully negate at least one monster's damage, right? Hopefully I understand there's a couple destroy card effects, right, in the game or spells, and that's perfectly fine. But at least I have 2 other ones that are available to me to defend that turn. It's a big stall mechanic that, even though it is a stall mechanic, it doesn't slow down the game as much as I think a lot of people think the idea of stalling does. Not comparatively to like a white weenie deck or a green token deck in Magic the Gathering where I'm summoning 20 0/1s. You know what I mean? Like all they have is defense. That's all it is. And if you don't have trample, I'm not taking damage until you get rid of all of these. Kind of thing. You know what I mean?
I get it for sure.
So I do like that the card draw helps with consistency and helping you kind of like play out bad starts for your games. There were times where I can get a couple. I just my hands just flush with normal summons my first turn, and then I just start threatening with a tribute summon right off the bat.
Yep.
Because that feels great because at least I have a big beat 2700 or 2500 monster on the field. I'm like, okay, well, he may die next turn, but at least I know that like I've got something to at least psychologically feel like I can threaten with right off the beginning.
For sure.
Special summons, they do exist, but they don't feel as necessary to play, right? Like again, I got railed for it in the in the Duel Masters episode, Master Duel episode, where I played the Dragon Maid deck, which is kind of convoluted, right? Because it involves a bunch of fusion summoning from the side deck, and reviving monsters from the graveyard and stuff like that.
Right.
This had a little bit of that, but again, just because everything was so much more simplified, it didn't feel as like confusing even to myself, even though I know my deck. And when I was playing out a lot of the games, when I started kind of really understanding how the game was starting to work, again, like we're talking rookie here, like low level still here for me. As much as I would get annoyed if I did get fucked over in the beginning, I did make a couple comebacks, in my later duels.
Right. It's not impossible to do that in this game, especially when you're drawing 5 cards.
Yes, and again, that helps with the consistency that I was talking about, where I'd be like sitting at 1200, 1500 health left over, but then I get what's his face, Multi-Strike Dragon, and just start like just removing, and was it like Sword and Shield? Like I'd have a Sword and Shield available in hand. It's like, oh, cool. Like everything for the most part's attack is higher than its defense.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And like, so I was able to get a couple cheeky wins using stuff like that, right? But I felt more ready to play out matches than to forfeit them when things weren't going my way in comparison to Master Duel, just because again, like Master Duel felt like once an opponent's deck started rolling again, which
that was it. Yeah.
Turn 2 or turn 3, I'm done, right?
Yep.
But in this game, because there is more kind of like my own kind of me playing. It almost felt like I was playing against myself half the time, or like against my own deck half the time.
Right.
It felt like I could actually muster up like a comeback in like later turns, because again the game did run more closer to like 7 to 10 turns versus the 3 to 5 in the previous Yu-Gi-Oh episode.
For sure. Yeah. I think you got what I wanted you to get out of it, which was good. That it is sort of a more give it another shot. Like I said, I'm not playing much these days, so this was one of the only things that I felt like I could realistically recommend to you, and at least you got out of it what I thought you'd get out of it, which was it's a more simplified, easy to play kind of game, and I was kind of happy that at least it's more fun than the actual card game for you, which is great because
I think so. My overall experience I think was better than Master Duel.
Yeah.
Again, the overall game speed is better in my opinion. But the game still does have a tendency to end up snowballing, right? Like
for sure. I mean, so does every other game.
So does every other game, yeah. But like, but again, as I mentioned before, like in Magic, there's more of a ramp up, right? Same with Legend of Runeterra, there's more of a ramp up. And Yu-Gi-Oh, it feels like it gets out of hand relatively quickly. But again, because the comebacks can happen, this a little bit more in comparison, just because again the pool is much smaller. The deck that I'm playing is probably closer to meta than I actually think it is. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah. Especially in the early ranks, monster pile does kind of do well if you can get your monster out, let alone if you have like a structured deck that is very consistent.
Yes.
So
and
I get it.
And I had a conversation with a couple of my coworkers who do play Yu-Gi-Oh, and they were talking about it, their experiences recently with the game, right? And a thing that I was able to pull for myself, I guess, out of that conversation was while it does address some of the issues that a younger or newer player of Yu-Gi-Oh may run into, it does sometimes and more often than not devolve into the same Yu-Gi-Oh previous issue where opponent has a wall and you have nothing to deal with it. It still has that issue, but but because the games are faster and they do feel less. I don't want to say I feel less invested.
Right.
I don't want to say because I was obviously, no matter what, I'm still trying to win. Right. I didn't come in here with like a defeatist mindset. I was like, no, I'm gonna play this game even if I don't fully understand. I'm gonna try to win these matches. It still felt like a lot of times I would get to that point where it's like, okay, it's turn 5, turn 6, they're rolling. I'm sitting at 2,000 HP. This one's basically over. I could assume, but I can't count myself out just because of the fact that I've had lucky draws where I've been able to clear their board and bust out some of my guys, and then now it's an even game. So
right, and all I would say to you is like, if you can't get over this wall, well, figure it out. You know what I mean? That's kind of like the way that I always looked at these card games and anything really where you're playing competitively and you're at a point where you can't get over the wall. You can't bring the oranges up the stairs for my American Dad fans. Figure out a way to get it up there.
Yeah.
Figure it out. It's kind of like what I would say to that. But like, I get it. Like, I understand that sometimes, especially early on, and you don't want to get too invested into this because you're probably not going to look at this game again after you after you are done with this episode. So you don't want to get too invested into it.
I could see and again, I gave Master Duel a chance again after, because remember I said from the initial experience I had a pretty good experience for the most part.
Right.
Like even though I was confused as shit. But there were waifus, there were dragons, and I was like, yeah, this is great. And I got my deck to start working, and I got to win a bunch of matches towards the end of my playtime, at least before the episode of that game. And then I went back to it 2 weeks later, thinking, I had a pretty decent time. I can give this another shot. Went back into it, and then I got like 3 more matches where bullshit happened. And I was like, okay, didn't think I was okay with this game as I thought I was. You know what I mean? I very quickly my opinion switched to the opposite. And then, and then I was like, okay, maybe step away from it again for like a day or two, try it again. And that's, and I can see myself trying this more than Master Duel. Again, just with the fact that, again, the games feel faster. I, again, the level of investment isn't the issue here. I want to say it's more like even though I feel quote unquote less invested. Again, I don't like using that term, but that's the only way for me to explain it right now.
Right.
I don't feel as down when I lose a match here versus Master Duel because the games feel faster. It's kind of like when I play roguelikes when I'm like, oh, I died. It's part of the game. Just get back into it again, kind of thing. You know what I mean? I'll throw myself against the wall to figure it out, and then hopefully the next one works better in my favor. That's kind of how I see this one in comparison to Master Duel, where it feels like I have to do a bunch of required reading to even get my foot into the door of that game.
Did you play this on PC or on mobile?
I played it on PC and I played it on the Steam Deck. So basically PC both times.
Right, okay. I think that's the other cool thing about having Duel Links is that it's a mobile game. So when you're sitting at the dentist and you don't feel like lugging out your Steam Deck or, something else, you at least have a game that you can play on your phone. Right?
I guess, but
that's like the positive of it.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Like even though I have a bunch of other games on my phone and stuff, and emulators or whatever, this does feel like something I could easily put like 5-10 minutes. Yeah, sure, I'll pull it out. Why not? You know what I mean? But I see the appeal. I see the point you were trying to make with this game. I absolutely do. I think it's just that unfortunately for me, I have kind of already just kind of set my boundaries and set my line in the sand of my opinion of the game of Yu-Gi-Oh overall in general. Where my experience with the game is not exactly what I'm looking for in a card game. I'm looking for something maybe a little bit slightly slower paced, a little bit more, not like immediate game plan. I like my game to be a little bit more fluid, I guess, in some respect, right? It's hard for me to explain it without just saying that, like, the fact that, like, Magic the Gathering, Legend of Runeterra, I'm allowed to get smacked a couple times if I make a small mistake. You know what I mean? Whereas in Yu-Gi-Oh, I make a small mistake and then I'm getting hit with a steel chair.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah, and again, like this is probably the easiest way for me to get back into Yu-Gi-Oh in general. Yeah. I still see myself, messing around with this every once in a while. Kind of like, I want to play a card game. I don't want to play a longer match of Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't want to play a longer match of Legend of Runeterra, Magic the Gathering, Legend of Runeterra. I can play this. You know what I mean? I can see myself doing so.
Plus, you also have somebody to play the game with.
That's
true.
Like,
I'll play games with you. I'll help you. Now that I know kind of what's going on, like I'll help you get your deck a little bit more optimized so that you can use the skills and maybe you'll be a little bit more successful rather than just playing Monster Pile. And then we can, we'll play some games. We'll actually play this time instead of like Master Duel where we were like, oh, we're going to play, and never played.
Yeah.
But I do want to stream Master Duel because I do want to make a run again. Dinosaurs got new support, so I was totally going to do it today. I don't think I'm going to do it after we record this, but one of these days I'm going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having a friend in general, getting into any card game is a very, very big deal. And I get, again, kind of egg on my face for me, kind of the mindset that I go into learning these types of games is like, I know how card games work. You know what I mean? Like, obviously it'd be nice to have somebody tell me, heads up, you're overthinking this, or not exactly the way you perceive this. It's actually this. That obviously would be nice. It would have been good for us to talk a little bit more. But again, I kind of want to go into it relatively blind to see if I can figure it out for myself. But for the most part, again, I see why people like this. Again, it might just not be for me. But it's closer to what it can be for me than my previous Yu-Gi-Oh experience. But for the most part, that's kind of really all my notes. I'm sorry, again, actually one last thing. Jeff, I'm sorry if I sound like a big bummer this episode. It's just that again, like I'm obviously trying to be relatively critical of this because I want to see. I'm interested in Yu-Gi-Oh, right?
Right.
It was a part of my childhood that I experienced, and I dipped my toe back into it a couple years ago, and I enjoyed myself for the most part. And it's just that I don't know what it is, but there's a hurdle clearly blocking me from enjoying this game. And I'm trying to figure out what the hell it is. And maybe me trying to be analytical and trying to figure out what it is that I'm not liking about this game is maybe that's also what's stopping me from actually just straight up enjoying this game.
For sure.
But I wasn't trying to harp on this game completely and just trying to nitpick at it for the sake of nitpicking at it. Again, I still can consider my experience overall with this one pretty okay. I definitely I didn't dislike my time with this game. Okay, I didn't want
Gotcha.
I didn't want to sound like I was too being like a dick about this one.
No,
okay?
no, not at all. No, you cannot like games on this. We established that on episode 2.
Yes, absolutely.
That you don't have to like the games
or
that
3,
we
whatever
talk
the hell
about.
it was. Yeah,
Right, whatever it was, whatever I melted down here. It's not about liking it or not. It's just about giving it a shot.
Yeah, which I tried to do as much as possible.
Right, and having me find somebody to play these games with, because playing randos online is a bummer sometimes.
I get it. Absolutely, I get it.
But for sure. Okay. But seriously, let's. I think that's about it. I think I've kept you long enough here. So thanks everybody for listening. If you like it, give us a like, give us a follow, subscribe, follow us on YouTube, follow us on social media, and we'll be back again real soon.
See you guys. Here, and then I have one other thing here. I guess just a really weird nitpick that I've got here. Why did they draw Straynge Cat like that?
Draw which card?
Straynge Cat.
Straynge Cat.
I don't know if this is a thing that anyone else has acknowledged, or because I'm too deep in the anime and into the weeb rabbit hole. But why did they draw the cat so sexy? I don't like the fact that like.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
But I'm not like, okay, sure, I'm a weeb. I get that. I'm a degenerate. Fine, whatever. I don't like the way it's looking at me, like looking off to the side like that. I don't. It creeps me out.
I'm not letting you in my house anymore. Not letting you near my cat anymore.
Look. Okay, I'm just saying I cannot be the only person to see that this card looks weird. I cannot be the only one to acknowledge this card.